Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From Cardinals headquarters, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
I like it. Cool open, good music. Now let's hope the content reaches the bar that has been set, and for that I put that squarely on your shoulders, Mike Jurecki.
Well, I am jacked up. I mean, this is something we've been talking about, and now we're going to officially unveil it. And listen, if you're a casual fan or a hardcore fan, this is one-stop shopping. I know your people are busy throughout the day. We're going to have great access, solid information, interaction with the fan base, and on Twitter and Instagram, and you can watch it a little bit later if you don't get a chance to see it live, but we appreciate everyone tuning in, at least for day one.
The series premiere here of Cards Cover, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll be with you live here at Cardinals headquarters at 3 o'clock. You can watch live on azcardinals.com/live video. And, of course, as MJ mentioned, if you miss a show, you can download as a podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, TuneIn, or SoundCloud.
We're everywhere.
Everywhere that you want your Cardinals information. And speaking of which, let's not waste any more time. Let's go straight to the headlines and take off this Cards Cover 2 show. And here is what is making news on this Monday. For starters, well, the team is back in Tempe. Training camp is all done, and head coach Steve Wilkes and the players kind of getting back into a routine. They are treating this week as if this is a regular season game, and specifically because with the game on Sunday night.
Yeah, we hadn't seen this in previous years. Usually we get to the third preseason game, and that's when the starters play the most, but they had a bonus practice on Sunday and Monday. Players will be off on Tuesday, and then they'll start preparing for their upcoming game against the Dallas Cowboys. Practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then they leave for Dallas, and then it's, of course, a Sunday night game on national TV. And, of course, you can hear it also on 98.7 FM.
At 5 p.m. is the kickoff, 1:30 pregame on the Arizona Cardinals radio network. So some injury news and a lot of good news as well. Specifically, Deone Bucannon back on the practice field today as well. Josh Bynes, his second straight day of practice. We had not seen Bucannon on the field, MJ, and I know he didn't do too much since the red and white practice.
Yeah, I spoke to Deone yesterday, and he's targeting week one. He hasn't had any setbacks. The main thing is he's got to get into football shape now. So he'll have this week, the following week, and then before they get it ready for their opener, they need him. He's the signal caller on defense. So good to see him not have any setbacks, and he should be ready to go in week one.
Dealt with a knee issue, Bynes a neck issue. Mike Glennon on the practice field did not play in New Orleans. He is making progress dealing with a forearm issue. Bryce Butler on the practice field, at least working with the training staff as he works his way back from a foot injury. The bad news, if you want to call it bad news again, it's the preseason, so let's kind of back off just a bit. But did not see, at least during the open portion of practice on Monday, Robert Nkemdiche, who has been bothered by a foot, and Corey Peters, who exited the New Orleans game on Friday, only to return because of a knee issue. Neither one of those injuries, though, considered too serious, but you want those guys on the field.
Yeah, on paper, the Cardinals were really excited about their top 8 guys. Now we'll find out who's going to be the opposite defensive end, whether it's Dora or a couple other guys in the mix. But for the most part, they really like their rotation at defensive tackle. Corey Peters, Robert Nkemdiche, Rodney Gunter, Olsen Pierre, then they throw in Chandler Jones. So they feel like they're going to have a good rotation, and these bodies should be fresh when we get to November and December. But they're really excited about that group. Now we know that Nkemdiche has flashed not only in training camp, but in obviously a first preseason game. He's dealt with some freak injuries. He had the high ankle sprain, that lingered. He had the calf strain, that lingered. The good news is, as you pointed out, neither serious here, so maybe a little bit of rest and get him ready for the opener because they need him. This is a big year for Robert Nkemdiche.
Oh, this is year number 3, and if he's not careful, then it might not be too many more years after 2018. So those are the headlines here, and again, throughout the show, we welcome your comments, your questions. You want to get in touch with us, so you want to know what's going on, or a question maybe that needs to be answered. Get us through social media, #CardsCover2. Again, that's #CardsCover2 using the number tune. We'll have some fan questions a little bit later on in the show, but let's recap now what happened on Friday in case you might have missed it in New Orleans. The Cardinals beat the Saints by the score of 20-15, and once again, it was the defense that set the stage for the Cardinals. Already in the first game, the Cardinals defense had 4 turnovers. Well, they had 4 more turnovers in this ball game. The first one, Hassan Reddick off the tip drill, and then a little bit later on, Vontarius Dora forcing a fumble. This defense getting after the football.
Yeah, and these 4 turnovers all came in the first half, and if you go back to week 1 against the Chargers, they forced 4 turnovers there, so that's what Steve Wilks is about, playing physical, attacking the ball, swarming the ball on defense, and so far they passed the eye test. Now, I know it's only the preseason. We get to the regular season, though, this is going to be one of their backbones, trying to stop the run, physical, and forcing turnovers.
David Johnson, a 9-yard touchdown run. Then perhaps the play of the game, Bené Benwikri actually had better position than Ted Ginn Jr., making sure he got both feet inbounds for that interception.
And when you look at Benwikri, he's played for Steve Wilks, and he actually said that he doesn't have to watch as much film. Now he's scheduling and looking at his opponents, and he knew that Ted Ginn can take the top off the defense. He gets the great pick, got both feet in bounds. That was a great play by Benwikri.
Josh Rosen's touchdown pass to Christian Kirk, and then Olsen Pierre with the strip sack, and there's Dora once again on the fumble recovery. He's been everywhere so far in the first 2 weeks of preseason. Third quarter, a near turnover. Jacquez Smith knocking the ball loose, but Rodney Gunter, you got to fall on that football. Don't try to pick it up and score. Unfortunately, the Saints were able to recover, but the Cardinals do get 3 points in the second half. Matt McCrane, a 53-yard field goal as he is working as the backup to Phil Dawson, but good to see the rookie out of Kansas State with the field goal, and again, the Cardinals win it 20-15.
And he's had a good camp, the rookie, and now obviously it's Phil Dawson's job to lose. I think this team's going to be in a lot of close games this year. Phil Dawson obviously improved in the second half. He did have a miss in that game, but he's looked outstanding. So this special team should be night and day from the previous years.
We skipped right over Sam Bradford. Didn't have a touchdown, but 6 of 6. He has not thrown an incompletion in the preseason. And those 6 completions against New Orleans, 6 different receivers.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of him getting a chance to work with all these receivers and tight ends, because him and Josh Rosen have shared reps, and then when they do their individual drills, he's able to throw the ball around. And listen, they may not spin it down the field as much as people anticipate, but yards after catch are going to be big when it comes to these wide receivers, because he's going to throw a lot of 3-step drops, get rid of the ball. Yards after catch will be big for these wide receivers.
And that's the one thing we've noticed so far through 2 preseason games is that ball, whether it's thrown by Bradford, Rosen, Glennon, or Charles Knopf, it is getting out of their hands quickly. And, yeah, that puts a little bit more pressure on the receivers to get out in space, make a couple of guys miss, and get 5-6 yards after the catch.
Yeah, and that's something that, Christian Kirk, I love the way he gets off the line of scrimmage. To me, I know that he plays in the slot in college. They got to find ways to get him on the field. I love him in those crossing routes. And, of course, he's going to be active on game day because he's going to be the punt returner. So even though maybe we haven't talked about him as much, but I think what him and Chad Williams did in the previous game really stood out, and they were hoping that one of these guys or 2 would step up.
Head coach Steve Wilks now 2-0 as Cardinals head coach. Again, it is still preseason, but Wilks has put an emphasis on winning these games even in the preseason. Let's take you back to New Orleans, courtesy azcardinals.com. Wilks addressing the team in the locker room.
That's a hell of a job right there, coming together as a team. We talk about right now takeaways, winning the takeaway battle. Hell of a job there, defense, taking the ball away. Great job. Great job. Great job. In the red zone, offense, we talk about being efficient right there. Hell of a job punching it in. Great job. Special teams winning the field position battle, okay? Doing your job. Great job there. Now, where we got to improve, man, all right? Got to play smart. Too many penalties. Too many penalties right here. We can't beat ourselves. We got to correct that, all right? Also understand, we got to stop the run on defense. We got to stop the run on defense, and we got to run the ball right there on offense. We back to work right here, all right, on Sunday, okay? Travel Sweat's going home. Enjoy the flight, baby. Bring it on in. Let's go.
The one thing that has really struck me about Coach Wilks is his attention to detail. Even in the preseason, he wants everything to be perfect. And look, perfection is non-existent. It can't be attained, but you can certainly work towards it. And every little thing, whether it's in the meetings, whether it's in practice, on the field, off the field, he is ready to make sure he has put the team in the best position to win.
Yeah, when the Cardinals did their coaching search, and it was thorough, he was a guy that they were looking for two things in a head coach. Dynamic personality, checks that box, and can lead men, checks that box. Training camp was completely different this year. I've talked to players on both sides of the ball and special teams. Yeah, it was more physical. They were outside more than they ever been. The fact is,
they're still outside, by the way. It was 98 degrees in Tempe on Monday. It was hot.
It's okay. Week 2, they got to go to Los Angeles. Maybe it's going to be hot and humid to play the Rams in week 2. The thing is, though, they have 3 different special teams period during practice. So they're grinding, but he's not wearing them out. So they get a chance when they're outside to go underneath the tent, get some water, regroup a little bit. So the way the practice has been scheduled, I am thrilled. I know it's only a couple of games, but just dealing with him since he's been hired, this is a home run. Now, I know they got to win games and it's a production business, but I feel like this guy does not remind me of a rookie head coach.
Well, the one thing that this team will be is it will be prepared. Now, that's not going to mean they're going to go 16-0. Things happen during the course of a game, during the course of a season, but they will be prepared, and that puts them a couple of steps ahead maybe of some other team, because there won't be anything that this coaching staff hasn't looked, hasn't examined, hasn't got the team set ready for come Sunday.
Yeah, and guys like Corey Peters and Trey Boston, Antoine Bethea and Larry Fitzgerald, they said he commands the room meetings, okay, in practice. Normally the head coach stands in the middle of the field. No, he's all over the place. He's in special teams, drills. You could see because of his background, he's working with the DBs. And if you're a guy like Brandon Williams, why wouldn't you not tap into his knowledge? That's where he cut his teeth. Now, keep in mind, when Ron Rivera lost his brother and his house burnt down, he was the interim head coach with the Carolina Panthers. And again, so he was able to address the team at those situations. But you could see, though, that this guy has had a plan for a long time, and now he's finally getting a chance to execute it.
Yeah, the Panthers' loss is the Cardinals' gain, and Carolina certainly hoping that they could have at least one more season with Steve Wilks, but that's not the case, as he is now the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki, this is our inaugural show, Cards Covered 2, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 p.m., live interactive multimedia. Again, you can watch live on azcardinals.com/live video. Miss the show, download it as a podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, TuneIn, or SoundCloud.
And I want to also mention the staff, okay? Obviously, Arians had some long-time, coaches on the staff, and Tom Moore and Larry Zerline and Tom Pratt, and they did a good job. But this staff has gotten much younger. There's more energy on the practice field. I want to say they're 10 years younger at every position. And, besides them retaining a couple guys from the Arians staff, like Byron Leftwich and Larry Foote and Kevin Garver, Ray Brown has come in here, and night and day from what they're being taught a couple years ago in the last couple of years, he's got the command of the room. Mike McCoy, a former head coach, you go down the line, they have quality coaches who are teaching technique and coaching these guys up. And I think that's the big difference when you watch them in practice.
Al Holcomb as the defensive coordinator coming with Wilks
Jeff
from
Rogers.
Carolina. So, yeah, it's a solid group, and, of course, hoping that it will materialize and equal out to wins on Sunday, starting week 1 against the Washington Redskins. Going back to Friday night in New Orleans, our biggest takeaways from preseason game number 2, and I think it's unanimous. The one thing that stood out, and there was several things, but we keep hearing about separation at the wide receiver position. Yes, Larry Fitzgerald is the number 1 receiver, but who is 2, 3, 4, 5 if they keep a 6th? But who's going to be that second guy if number 11 is covered, double-teamed, and taken out of a game plan? Who is that second receiver? Coach Wilks wanted separation. I think he got it. Christian Kirk, Chad Williams both stepped up. Kirk, 4 catches, 49 yards, a touchdown. Williams, 3 catches, 44 yards.
Yeah, and listen, it's been up and down when you start looking past Larry Fitzgerald. Now, on paper, we could say David Johnson's probably the second best wide receiver on the roster, and then you throw Ricky Seals-Jones in. But at some point, these receivers have to win at the line of scrimmage and get off press coverage, and I think we got a chance to see that from Kirk and Chad Williams. And I know they're kind of intrigued with Greg Little and Trent Sherfield and J.J. Nelson for the most part, but I like the fact that somebody stepped up. I'm curious to see when Butler can get back on the field because he's a tall receiver. I think if you look at the depth chart, him and Larry are number 1. That's really in crayon right now. When we get to the regular season, we'll try to figure that part out. So they flooded the position. Now it's just a matter of which guys step up, and you don't want to see them take a step back. You want to see consistency, and I don't know if they were able to see that from Chad Williams and J.J. Nelson initially in training camp.
Did you say crayon?
Yeah.
Do you use crayons?
No.
I thought the pencil. You put it in a pencil, so you easily
Well, then
erase
you can erase it.
Okay, crayons?
Okay.
We need to work on that.
Just a scribble.
Okay, the second-round pick, you want them to contribute in year 1. Christian Kirk, how much of a learning curve is there for him? Here's head coach Steve Wilkes on his rookie wide receiver.
I said this a while back. This guy comes to work like a pro every day. You watch him in individual period, full speed. Special teams, full speed. So he creates that mindset of really trying to practice as if, how he wants to play. And, he's just getting better each and every day. So it was a great confidence booster for him to be able to have the game that he had, and hopefully he can continue to build on this.
Certainly you like to see it, and the Cardinals with their rookie draft classes in the past haven't maybe gotten as much out of it initially. It's been a little bit of a taken some time, and we'll talk more about the 2018 draft class. But you like what you see with Kirk so far. And Chad Williams, year 2, I want to say year 1 was a waste, but I think we expected a lot more from him last season. It didn't materialize. But he, in speaking with the media earlier this week, has learned that, yes, year 2, things are a little bit slower for him.
I just need to keep progressing and just play hard. Play my heart out every snap like I always do. Playing very great without the ball. When it's not coming my way or when it's not in my hands, running my route to perfection, getting other guys open, sticking my nose in there in the run game. Basically it. That's kind of my style of play. That's just how I've been since, like I told the radio tonight, that's just how I've been since I was little. I don't know what it is. That's just how I play. It's man on man, and I feel like I'm the better man in every situation I match up in. So I play with that extreme confidence, and I think that's what helped me play to my capability. Oh, it's real fun because it's just like after the snap, they don't want to look at you. And you're like, oh, you don't want to look at me? All right, I'm coming right back at you. Right? So it's real fun to just have that competitive nature, and I'm competitive. I'm real big. I like to compete. I don't care if it's Rochambeau, table tennis, table hockey. I don't care. I just like to compete. I could just tell OTAs I felt real good. That's when I kind of felt it all just like, it's just all coming together. It's all coming to the center point, and it's all just working out, So I started feeling real good in OTAs, and I just told myself, like, man, we're just going to play, Just got to go out there and play.
Craig, usually you see guys from year 1 to 2 make that jump. They know what it's like to be a pro. They know it's a grind. And he was a third-round pick out of Grambling, so the competition wasn't the same. And maybe he didn't come in the best shape last year, so he was behind the 8 ball. And listen, he's not alone. Between John Brown and J.J. Nelson, they had some drops. They weren't consistent. You could see the light bulb's gone off for him now. He knows that the team is counting on him. And for him to gain confidence, he also worked out with Chad Ochocinco in the offseason, Chad Johnson, to improve his route running. And in this system, you don't have to learn just one wide receiver. You got to learn X, Y, and Z. And you're asked to block. Just look at Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, his career has been rejuvenated playing in the slot and becoming a blocker in the run game. They're going to be a run team first. So these guys got to not only go out for passes and catch the ball in yards after catch, they're going to be relied on when it comes to blocking in the run game. And it's not easy to learn all three. And I think he's figured it out considering they installed a brand new playbook when Mike McCoy was hired.
And the one thing about his performance on Friday, if you remember Coach Wilkes mentioning as they broke camp at University of Phoenix Stadium, he was asked about Williams, and the day before, Williams did not have a good practice on Wednesday. He was dropping a lot of footballs, and he was upset with himself. Wilkes wasn't fine, but he said, look, you'll be fine. And he responded, and Wilkes told the media, look, he'll catch every single football. He might even score on Friday, and he didn't score, but he caught every single football thrown his way, and that, I think, is huge. You take advantage of Bryce Butler not being on the field, and you need that young player, that young piece whom you've drafted and put time and effort into to actually see it materialize on the field.
Well, let's be honest. Between Bradford and Rosen, they are very accurate. So it's not like they're going to lay them out to dry when they go over the middle. The ball's going to be between the numbers as soon as you make your cut. Very similar to Kurt Warner. It was a timing route, okay? So when they make their cut, the ball's going to be there. And that's why, because they may not throw it down the field a ton, they're still going to take care of the receptions and then yards after catch. So with Rosen and Bradford throwing like they have, not only in the preseason but in training camp, it's going to make it a lot easier for the wide receivers where they don't have to lay out and take a big hit over the middle. Here, catch the ball, run up the field.
Speaking of Rosen, let's touch on his play. He did have a series with the first-team offensive line. David Johnson had already exited. Larry Fitzgerald had already exited. But you saw a little bit more confidence with Rosen because he got the protection, and it was on that drive that he found Christian Kirk on the touchdown toss. It's just good to see him, and I think it even carried over to when he was working with the second-team offensive line. He got touched, but he didn't get sacked or anything like that. The protection was a lot better, but Rosen taking that next step forward as a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, and the fact is that he can call an audible at the line of scrimmage. That's fascinating to me. I know Sam Darnold has a little bit of the same authority, but I don't know about Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, some of these young quarterbacks, even Lamar Jackson. So he has the ability to look at the coverage and check out of a play. And to me, you're putting a lot on his plate, but we all know, depending on what happens at Bradford, you have to get Rosen ready, whether it's week 5, week 10, week 15. Hopefully Bradford could stay healthy, but that's the reason why he's playing behind the first-string offensive line. He's got to figure out what they do and vice versa.
In 3 series against the Saints, Rosen was 10 of 16 for 107 yards and that touchdowns. Here is Coach Wilkes on his rookie quarterback.
Well, it just really tells you the potential that the young man has. And you know, his mindset, as you just mentioned, Bob, to be able to go through, I think we had 2 on that particular drive, penalties right there that put us back, but to be able to hit the reset button, go through his progression. It was a clean pocket. Christian did a good job of really trying to reverse field a little bit and get away from the defender. Did a great job putting it on him. So hopefully we'll be able to see that connection for many, many years to come.
That would be the goal, obviously, for the Cardinals. And Coach Wilkes referencing the penalties. There was a false start and a delay of game. Second week in a row now we've seen Rosen get caught with that play clock hitting 0, but certainly able to respond on 3rd and goal from the 13 and scoring a strike. The only person who was going to catch the football was Kirk, and it made it 14-0 in favor of the Cardinals.
I love the pump fake because then you can draw a safety over, and you're right. There's only one person that would have caught that. He went up in traffic and got that. You know, Rosen, and I never really thought about this, but he said this is the first time he's had a speaker in his helmet, and it goes off at 15 seconds, and so now at that point, he's got to figure out, am I going to check out of a play? So he's got a lot going on, but he's able to process the information. So that's something to look for. Maybe that's why you got a couple of delay of game. You don't want any pre-snap penalties. You don't want any post-snap penalties. Those are mental errors.
And according to Chad Williams, Josh Rosen is a baller. And that's all he kept saying over and over. He's a baller, just the way he carries himself on the field, off the field. The Cardinals certainly hoping that's the case long term, whether that's this year or next year, whomever it might be. They certainly drafted their quarterback of the future, getting Rosen out of UCLA with the number 10 overall pick.
This is a great situation. We go back to January. They had 0 quarterbacks on the roster. Now, the good news is they weren't playing the following week. They go out and sign Bradford. They go out and get Mike Glennon. They go out and draft Josh Rosen, only give up a 3 and a 5. The future is bright at that position. You talk to veteran players, and you wouldn't think they're talking about a rookie in Josh Rosen.
Well, he's got great guys to learn from as well, both in that quarterback room.
I like that quarterback room.
With Bradford, with Glennon, and Byron Leftwich as well. They've all been there and done it, and Rosen is certainly getting on-the-job training here with the Arizona Cardinals. This is Cards Cover 2, the inaugural edition here from the Cardinals facility in Tempe. We are live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Invite your comments, your questions here via social media, hashtag CardsCover2. That's CardsCover2 using the number 2. You can watch live on azcardinals.com/live video. Download it as a podcast in case you miss a show, although why would you ever want to miss this show?
Yeah,
every
shame on you.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Download it via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, TuneIn, or SoundCloud.
Yeah, and the other thing is, do you see the locker room speech from Steve Wilks? Do you see the interviews from in the locker room? That's what you call access.
Absolutely. Right here on Cards Covered 2 and on azcardinals.com. All right, let's switch from offense to defense. And the one player, and actually there's several players, but the one player that I think has certainly caught a lot of people's attention because he's brand new, and that is Bené Benwickery. Not new to this defense and Al Holcomb and Steve Wilks because he is a former Carolina Panther, but Benwickery certainly in – you saw it Friday on the interception with covering Ted Ginn Jr. Here's a guy that they brought in. They flooded that cornerback position trying to figure out who they could get opposite Patrick Peterson. And Benwickery, whether he's number 2 or number 3, you can't deny him playing time because of his ball instincts.
Well, and he's the versatility. He could play because normally he was going to play in the slot. When they brought Boston in, that allowed Budda Baker to go in the slot. So he could play inside, outside, and he mentioned he could play a little safety. And he mentioned that he doesn't have to study the playbook as much as other guys, so he's studying their opponents because he knows the defense like the back of his hand. Now, they've probably installed a few different wrinkles based on personnel, but he's ahead of the game here. And the fact that he's played for Wilks and showed up in Carolina, this is a really good pickup. He gives them depth, whether he starts or not. We could see this team play 3 corners at one time. We can see him play 3 safeties at one time. You're going to see a lot of nickel and dime defense, and you want to get your playmakers on the field, and I think he's proven that thus far.
He was responsible for 2 of the 4 turnovers. The first one, the Reddick interception, was actually Benwickery in coverage, knocking that ball up in the air that Scooby Wright tipped right into the hands of Reddick. Speaking of the Wilks-Benwickery connection, here is the head coach talking about his former and now current player.
The biggest thing with Bené is that tremendous ball skills. The guy has a great knack, of really filling route combinations. Again, as you mentioned, he's been in the system before. Great play understanding, where they were on the field. Most importantly, who was in front of him. Ted Ginn, the vertical speed guy, maintained that lead position. He came down with a great play. I worked him out coming out of college. We drafted him. So I understand the core DNA that's what's inside of him. Ran into a rough spot there. Things happen. He put that behind him. And, second chances mean a lot to a lot of people. Greg Little was one of those guys, So I realized Bené's potential, and he realized the opportunity that he has here. He's making the most of it right now.
You talk about Benwickery, Jamar Taylor, cornerbacks that are just behind Patrick Peterson, but the Cardinals went out this offseason and have got, at least what we've seen so far in practice and on games, 2 guys that I think they not only can trust but use. And then depending on what they do with the safeties, you could have there's 6 right there, 6 names with Bethea, Boston, and Budda Baker. You're talking 6 DBs that the Cardinals can rotate and mix and match however they want this season.
Yeah, and Rudy Ford, I think, makes the roster. He's really going to excel on special teams. He could take Justin Bethel. Let's go back to last year. Bethel gets a chance to play there. Okay, Brandon Williams gets a chance to play there. And what do the Cardinals do? They signed Tremont Williams, and he was a great pickup. He wanted to go back to Green Bay, but they got younger at that position. They've been studying and scouting Taylor, and they were able to pull off a trade. He was able to take a pay cut to stay here, so we'll see how he performs because he would be in line to possibly retain next year, and we're not having that question every year in training camp, who's playing opposite of Patrick Peterson.
A couple of negatives from New Orleans and some issues that Coach Wilks addressed immediately after the ball game. You heard the locker room speech. Let's start with one, the rush defense. It's kind of been non-existent. There were 109 yards at halftime that the Saints had against the Cardinals, 183 overall. And Wilks talks about gap integrity, undisciplined, and then the missed tackles. Part of that is maybe just because it's early in preseason, but he wants to be able to run the football and stop the run.
And tackle. And that's part of the equation here. Yeah, and Robert Nkemdiche, you talk about undisciplined gap control. He got blown off the ball for about a 15-yarder. Give the advantage to the Saints. They were able to win the line of scrimmage, but Corey Peters was in and out of there. But no excuses. To me, these are teachable things. You can correct these things, but mental errors, that's what cost you. And so Nkemdiche's got to learn that, hey, this is my assignment. I've got to go against the guy in front of me because the linebackers are trusting me so they can shoot the gap. And once they kind of figure it all out, because I think the communication's been well on defense considering how many different players they play, and maybe 14 to 16 on game day where they're rotating in and out. We talked about the 8 defensive tackles they like on the roster. So for the most part, I think it's things they can clean up. And obviously, you don't want to have any mental errors.
And let's talk about one player who actually knows what Coach Wilks wants to have happen with that defense. That would be Trey Boston, and the Cardinals picked up, actually officially signed the day they reported to training camp. Boston, on what Coach Wilks expects from that rush defense.
We understand what needs to be done. It doesn't take him, yelling at us all the time for us to get it, get through to us. But we got to take accountability and, getting that run stop. We're going to take a couple games to get it to where we really want it. But you can see us just picking up more and more as, the weeks go on.
The other thing that has plagued this Cardinals team, Mike, is the penalties. There were 13 against New Orleans, 11 the week before against the Chargers, and the ones that I think bother coaches the most are those pre-snap penalties. There were 4 false start penalties in the first half against the Saints, and that's talking about discipline, making sure you don't move before the ball is snapped, but certainly double-digit penalties in back-to-back games, no matter whom is playing out there, first, second, third team, that you need lowered.
Well, you're giving opposing teams first downs, a new set of downs, and so you got to get them off the field on third down. Again, some of that stuff's correctable. Once you get to your starting lineup, we think the starting 5 will be together. Hopefully they can stay healthy. We're going to get into Mikey Putty here coming up along with Mason Cole because that's where it all starts. But, yes, I mean, some of those false starts, guys are coming in and out of the field, but you don't want any delayed hits, no roughing the passer. I mean, I know it's football, it's going to happen, but you got to cut down those penalties. You can't beat yourselves on game day.
Craig Grialou, Mike Jurecki, it's Cards Cover 2 Interactive. We invite your comments, your questions via social media, hashtag Cards Cover 2, hashtag Cards Cover 2. That's using the number 2. We actually do have some fan questions already. Let's dive into some of these. And the first one we got via Twitter, at AZ Cardinal Fan Cardinal Fan 20 wants to know who will start at the second cornerback position in 2018.
Well, if I had a guess, and we still got 2 preseason games and a lot of practices to go, I would say Jamar Taylor right now. Now, Ben Wickery is great depth. He can play a couple different positions as a maintain inside, outside safety. He's a really good special teams player. But I think there was a reason why they went out and got Taylor to come in here and be the corner opposite of Patrick Peterson. But we all know you need depth in this league. But I would say right now, he'll be the starting corner opposite of Pat, too.
And he's been basically running first team since he was acquired for a future 2020 6th-round draft pick. So right now it would be Taylor. And then another question via Instagram talking about Ben Wickery and the constant big plays that we've seen out of him. Could he potentially unseat Taylor if it is Taylor as the number 2 corner? And certainly, yeah, but we talked about it. You need depth at the cornerback position, and sometimes you might see 3 corners on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, right now I just think Taylor right now, but again, they're not just going to go play their base defense 4-3. They're going to go nickel and dime, which means you're going to bring in 3 safeties, you're going to bring in 3 corners because teams are going 3 and 4 wide. So I think he'll have a role not only on defense but also on special teams. But right now, and Taylor, to me, along with Ben Wickery, they are really good open field tacklers. And as a corner in this league, if you're going to be on an island opposite of Peterson, you have to tackle.
Staying with the defense, got a question on Twitter concerning Marcus Golden. Have not seen him on the field. He's currently on the physically unable to perform list alongside Jermaine Gresham. Golden coming off the ACL. I know he would like to be available and on the field week 1, but we are getting closer to that contest against Washington.
Yeah, according to Steve Wilkes, he told us the other day that they haven't had any setbacks. They're on schedule to continue to get better here. How realistic is week 1? I guess we'll find out as we get closer. Both him and Gresham are on PUP. At some point, you got to take those guys off there. If they start the season on PUP, then they're out for 6 weeks. But that's not the plan. No setbacks in rehab. And as we get closer, we'll know more. Because Marcus Golden 2 years ago, we know how much passion he plays with his hair on fire. They missed him last year, even though Chandler had an outstanding year, deserved Defensive Player of the Year, along with Calais Campbell. So for the most part, they need a lot of these guys to just stay healthy and try to step up.
Again, appreciate the fan feedback. We'll get into more of your questions a little bit later on in the show. #CardsCover2, and that's using the number 2 to get involved here on the show. The one player that I don't think is getting talked enough about, and we all focus on the quarterback, the skill position, and in whatever the defense does when you're talking about a turnover, whether it's an interception or a forced fumble. But the offensive line play, and one player in particular, I know you're big with Pro Football Focus, and I think sometimes it can serve as not as a backup, but it can enhance your opinion on what you're seeing. I don't get it too far into numbers, but if you just look at Pro Football Focus on how they've graded the Cardinals in these first 2 preseason games, the highest graded player in both games, Chargers and Saints, left guard Mike Jurecki.
And Craig, they don't hand out grades over 90 like they're nickels. I mean, the first game 92.8, second game 92. Now this is interesting. Let's go a little background here. Mike Jurecki was injured last year. A lot of people thought maybe his best football was behind him. They bring in a new head coach. They bring in an offensive line coach. And they asked him to take a pay cut. Now, he prefers to be on the West Coast. He didn't want to start over and go to a new team, so he was able to swallow his pride. But this is encouraging to me because on the left side between him and Humphreys, and then you throw in Mason Cole, we're going to get into, and then the right side, if these 5 guys can stay healthy, they should be able to protect the quarterback and run the football. So give credit to Jurecki. Dropped some weight. He's in much better shape right now. And technically, this is his last year, unless the Cardinals want to re-up him based on his production. But he had to swallow his pride a little bit. And anytime you bring in a new head coach and a new offensive line coach, you wonder, how am I going to fit in? Are they trying to replace me? That hasn't been the case.
Number 76 on the field, and Jurecki, you've seen, if you kind of look at replays on the runs that the Cardinals have had, you see Jurecki 5-10 yards downfield. He's blocking into the secondary, springing David Johnson free for those 2 14-yard runs against the Chargers, helping Johnson get into the end zone against the Saints. Those plays, you want those 3 interior offensive linemen to really get the defense back on their heels. And again, it just goes back to what Wilkes wants, and that's being able to run the football.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, listen, I know it's a passing league, but him being a defensive-minded head coach, he said, you know how demoralizing it is when a team can just line up and run down your throat? I mean, they're going to throw it. Mike McCoy's told us they're still trying to find out their identity on offense. McCoy said one game we may throw at 50. One game we may run at 50. And that reminds me of the New England Patriots. Now, Sam Bradford was with Josh McDaniels for 1 year when he was fired in Denver, and then he returned to New England. This is going to look similar to the Patriots' offense. Now, I know they don't have Tom Brady, but a lot of 2 tight end sets. The Cardinals will have a fullback for the first time in 6 years. Okay, Wisenhunt was the last head coach that had a fullback, and Anthony Sherman, and they traded him the first day of the new season the following year. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I mean, they should be able to really run the football and take advantage of that.
Sam Bradford addressed the media earlier today, and among the questions that he was asked was talking about the offensive line and specifically asked about Mike Jurecki.
The man is playing about as good as anyone I've seen play up front. I mean, this camp, just watching him play, it's been pretty impressive, both in the run game and the pass game. He just seems to be kind of swallowing guys up out there. As a quarterback, it gives you a lot of confidence knowing that he's playing at such a high level up there.
Missed 15 games last season because of the triceps injury, and there was a lot of discussion over the offseason that perhaps maybe Upati, after getting hurt in week 1, had suited up for the final time because of his contract, and then you mentioned it with a new head coach, and sometimes you want your own players. But he swallowed his pride, came back, and has looked very, very good.
I really think, and I don't know this 100%, but they remember how they were holding on to Jared Valdir.
Correct.
So you wonder, and Valdir played better in the second half, but they obviously went out and got Andre Smith, and so Valdir was, expendable, and they ended up trading Valdir, so you didn't know which decision they were going to make. And obviously, they, it sounds like Valdir's doing well in Denver right now, but Upati, to me, I mean, if he can continue this, you're going to see him, and I love when you see a lineman get to the second level. He's going after linebackers, safeties, and defensive backs, and you know what? Those guys don't want to get in his way.
A 4-time Pro Bowler, Upati, a man, a few words, doesn't really like the spotlight, but when you play as well as he has so far in the preseason,
Media's coming.
People want to hear from you, and Upati, we made him speak earlier today.
I was on IR and might as well get better and lift hard and get my body right. I just knew that I got to come and prove myself back, and especially this is my last year here, so just got to go out with the bang.
The one thing that kind of gets lost in this, and probably what helped Upati decide to come back here after a pay cut, is the offensive line coach, Ray Brown, who coached Upati back in 2010, Upati's first year in the NFL when they were together in San Francisco. And that speaks volumes of how Upati feels about Coach Brown and vice versa, that those two able to work again 8 years after they were together in San Francisco.
Yeah, and it sounds like Ray Brown reached out to him and wanted to have a face-to-face conversation and find out where he's at mindset-wise and how he would fit in with this Cardinal offense. And so, again, we can't say enough good things about Ray Brown, just his teaching, his coaching.
2 decades he played the offensive
20
line
years.
position.
And you see what he looks like? I think he could still play.
I'm sure if you
Maybe
really
one
needed
snap.
to. Just one. Just one.
He's like,
Ray Brown versus Chandler Jones.
I did that for 20 years. I am now coaching. And listen, great addition to the staff.
Cards Cover 2 continues here. Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. We invite your comments, your questions via social media. Hashtag Cards Cover 2 using the number 2. We're with you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. live from the Cardinals facility here in Tempe. And among the topics that Upati – look, when Upati speaks, sometimes you got to throw a bunch of questions
E.F. Hutton,
at him.
you got to listen.
He was very complimentary of Chase Edmonds, the fourth-round rookie out of Fordham, and Upati kind of compared him, just the background, to David Johnson. Small school, immediately impresses, and Edmonds is one of those players that certainly has impressed not only in practice but in games as well, specifically the touchdown run against the San Diego Chargers. And basically,
what an effort here.
Body surfed over Mason Cole in the interior of the offensive line, but Edmonds has certainly raise some eyebrows, and now all of a sudden you got to figure out a way to get him on the field.
It's a good problem.
Absolutely. And the one thing you can say now about this 2018 rookie draft class, and I know you tweeted about this earlier, MJ, is just the contributions that you're getting, not from one or two, but across the board, from quarterback Josh Rosen all the way down to 7th-round pick Corey Cunningham.
Now, they only had 6 because they gave up a 3 and a 5 to move up to get Rosen. They didn't give up a number 1 next year, so all that's off the books now. Rosen's played 45 snaps. He's thrown a touchdown pass. He looks the part. We talk about Christian Kirk and maybe his breakout game, but he also, the punt return in week 1, he's played 45 snaps. Then you throw in Mason Cole. And when you look at this Cardinals offensive line, when they're on the field and they're standing across from each other, I love A.Q. Shipley, tough as nails, only missed 4 snaps in the last 2 years. Mason Cole, 6'4", 307. I mean, they're all 6'4", 6'5". And then you throw in Chase Edmonds. No disrespect to Kerwin Williams, this is an upgrade. Williams signed with the Chiefs in the offseason. Chris Campbell, a little inconsistent, like his size, though. He can play press coverage, he's got long arms at the line of scrimmage. And then Corey Cunningham. They're really excited about this guy. If I had a guess right now, I think all 6 of these guys make the active roster. Now, we got to let it play out, but only 6. And this is quite the contrary from previous years where maybe Arians and somebody else didn't want to play rookies early. Remember David Johnson? Week 1, he gets the Saints a touchdown. He gets a kickoff return in week 2, but he really doesn't start playing until December when Chris Johnson went down. Usually Arians would say after Thanksgiving is you hope that rookies contribute. That's not the case with these guys. I mean, depending on what happens with Bradford, Kirk's going to be active, Cole's going to be active, Edmonds going to be active, and then we'll find out about the other guys. But they're going to be on this 53-man roster, and I haven't even talked about some undrafted free agents that could make the 53.
And Cole was thrust into the spotlight, into this role as the starting center, because the plan was for him to back up A.Q. Shipley, who, as you mentioned, has been very, very durable over the last 2 years. But unfortunately, Shipley placed on injured reserve after tearing his ACL in the red-white practice, and now all of a sudden that stable force on the offensive line is gone, and you bring in a rookie who, by all accounts, coaches, teammates, has certainly assimilated himself very, very well amongst a veteran offensive line. He's making the line calls as a rookie, and if there's a silver lining in all of this is the fact that the injury happened early.
Yes.
So Cole has had 2 games already, and likely 2 more, at least the 3rd preseason game. We'll see if he plays in that 4th one against Denver. Probably not. But he's had time here to work with Sam Bradford and the rest of the first team, and it's not like it's day of or week 1 that you're starting a brand new center.
Yeah, I mean, they worked on the silent count last week because they were going to New Orleans, and you could see that Justin Pugh, he was making the line calls, but Pugh would let him know when to snap the ball. And so he's past it now. Once Shipley went down, he has 5 weeks and 4 preseason games to get up to speed. So far, talking to coaches and players, he's passing the eye test. And we can go back and look at his history, 104 consecutive starts. Now, he only played 1 year at center at Michigan, but he played for Jim Harbaugh. They run a pro-style offense. They preach toughness there, and I think he's going to bring it. So if there's a silver lining on Shipley, it was when it happened, because this allowed him to get 5 weeks until the opener and 4 preseason games.
And it sounds like against the Saints, in talking with Upati, again, Upati was just all over the place. I mean, he speaks, and as you mentioned, everyone listens, so we're referring to Mike Upati a lot. But he mentioned that Cole was handling everything on his own in that Saints game. Yeah, he's got Upati on one side, Pugh on the other side to help him. But at least right now, it is Mason Cole doing a lot of that work.
The only help that he got was when to snap the ball, because Pugh would look back and they would. Otherwise, he makes the line calls as they're down, calls out the Mike linebacker, and then Pugh will give him a tap on his hip when they're going to spike the ball.
So another big test coming the Cardinals' way this weekend, Sunday night against the Dallas Cowboys. 5 p.m. is the kickoff, 1:30 pregame on the Arizona Cardinals radio network. As we near the end of this first edition of Cards Covered 2, let's go back to some of the fan questions. Again, invite your comments via social media, hashtag Cards Covered 2, using the number 2. And got a couple from Instagram, and one in particular. Do you see Fitzgerald playing next season? Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald, or is this our last season with the GOAT?
I mean, it's just a guess. Larry takes everything 1 year at a time. Obviously, his body takes a toll throughout the course of the year. He'll make a decision after the season. But again, he's playing at a high level. Look at the numbers he's put up in the last 3 years. I know he's really intrigued with Sam Bradford and Josh Rosen, but that won't have anything to do with it. It will be ultimately Larry's decision, and that's why we got to appreciate what he does this year. And we'll see what happens next year. But I don't think he's even thinking about that right now.
15 years in the NFL. Along those same lines, again, another question via Instagram about the order of our wide receiver depth. I know we kind of talked about separation. Yeah, that's true. Right now, it's Fitzgerald, Chad Williams, Christian Kirk, Bryce Butler still on the sidelines working out of a foot issue. But certainly, yeah, you've got 4 right there that I just named that I think have solidified themselves and will be on this roster. And then you throw in David Johnson, Ricky Seals-Jones, Gabe Holmes, tight ends, running backs. They're all going to be in the mix in this offense.
And the other guys that we didn't mention, J.J. Nelson, okay, he's scheduled to make 1.9 this year. Or do they feel like they need someone to take a top off the defense? Greg Little hasn't played in the game, but he's got great size, 6'2", 222. And then you throw in there Trent Sherfield, an undrafted free agent for Vanderbilt. So, again, they flood the position. We focus so much on the top 4 guys. If you're dressing on game day 5 and 6, you got to play on special teams.
And again, not a lot of names, at least that's going to capture the national attention, but guys that are working hard that are certainly capturing the coaches' attentions on the field and off the field. And one more question, this via Twitter, wants to know about DJ Foster. Does he make the 53-man roster?
As of today, I say yes, and I think the Cardinals will keep 5 running back / fullback. David Johnson, Chase Edmonds, DJ Foster, TJ Logan, and Derek Coleman. So who's the odd man out? Possibly Elijah Penny. He does play on a lot of teams. Maybe they go heavy at that position. Maybe we don't see all those guys active on game day. Derek Coleman is going to excel on special teams. He's a really good special teams player. And so he's going to be active on game day. So now it comes down to how many they keep. But I think Foster playing on teams, and also he can catch the ball in the backfield, that can go a long way for him to secure a roster spot.
We invite fan questions. Hashtag #CardsCover2. Hashtag #CardsCover2 using the number 2. Want to do this again on Wednesday?
I'm ready.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 p.m.
I'm jacked up, Grialou.
Live, interactive, multimedia. You can watch live on azcardinals.com/live video. Download it after the fact as a podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, TuneIn, or SoundCloud. Mark it down on your calendar 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3 p.m. Special thanks to Tim Delaney, Jim Alejandro, Devin Henry, plus Jonathan Hayward and Jackson Sipes. For Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. This has been Cards Cover 2, the inaugural edition, here on the Arizona Cardinals Radio Network.